Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Female Film Critics Panel. And this is so exciting today. I am very thrilled. Today, we have with us, we only have one guest because it's just so epic. I didn't need to have any other members of the panel to have Claudia Puig here. She's the former film critic for USA Today and the president of the LA Film Critics Association and program director for Santa Barbara International Film Festival. Claudia, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, this was very, very exciting because I have admired your work for a long time, and I had gotten your email from a friend, and I had emailed you, and I didn't hear anything back, and I'm like, oh, she's probably just too busy because she's super amazing, and then I was just, I don't know, kind of bored and thinking, who could I get on in May? And I was like, I'm going to try it again. So then I emailed you, and of course, it had gone to spam the previous time. And so I was so thrilled when you responded. And so thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I
My
really,
pleasure.
really,
Yeah.
yes.
No, I love to talk about, it's so important that we get more women in criticism. And that and diversity in general is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm always happy to talk
Yeah.
about it.
Well, I wanted to ask you, how did you get your start? Did you grow up loving film? Did you watch a lot of film with your family, your
Yeah, I
parents?
did. I did grow up loving film, and I had two film loving parents. I'm an only child, and my father is a college professor, and my mother actually had a little career. She was on contract with MGM. She did dubbing of movies into Spanish. So both my parents are born in Mexico. Spanish was my first language. And so back in she dubbed the voice of Judy Garland in Meet Me in St. Louis.
No
Yeah,
way.
and Jane in Tarzan, although it was a little bit more said in Meet Me in St. Louis. But yeah, so she had a very beautiful, mellifluous voice, and so she loved movies. She was brought up by she had an older sister. She came from a very big family. She had an older sister who was like 10 years older, who was always taking her to movies in the classic days of movies. And so I grew up with her, kind of love of Hollywood classic cinema. And then my dad was this much more avant-garde, adventurous kind of guy. So he would take me to like Fellini films and like all manner of, Truffaut or, just everything. And probably things that I should not have been seeing at a very young age.
Yeah.
But I probably warped because of it. But anyway, I was brought up on, all kinds of, like, I remember as a kid going to see the Garden of the Fiends Continis. It was like Visconti, I think. Anyway, just, growing up on all that. And then my mother sitting me down and saying, when To Kill a Mockingbird came on, was it To Kill a Mockingbird. And she also really loved Keys of the Kingdom, I remember. And she sat me down and she's like, watch this performance of Gregory Peck. He's amazing. And so I was getting my little kind of training as a kid. So I just grew up loving films.
That is great. So you were introduced to not only English films, but films in Spanish and other languages from an
Yeah,
early age?
absolutely. Italian, French, Spanish, all the stuff that was like Nouvelle Vague, just all the stuff that was happening in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And then, I continued watching those just
Hmm.
out of my own interest. So, yeah.
What did you think of these kind of like heady, more French New Wave, these films that you saw as a young kid?
I remember going to see, it was probably 8.5 or maybe a Satiricon. It was a Fellini movie. And there were
Uh-huh.
parts that they thought were maybe slightly not so appropriate. So they would send me out to get popcorn, like, oh,
Oh, nice.
but I remember just going like, whoa, this is weird, and just trying to like make sense of it. But I also kind of just accepted it and absorbed it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I'm sure it's informed my taste. And also taught me a lot, about different cultures and just opened. I love to read too, so all of that kind of comes together. Yeah,
Hmm.
so I kind of done
Yeah.
the same thing with
So
my girls, with my daughter.
was your mom a singer then? If I guess if she's
She wasn't
dubbed
a
for
singer.
Judy.
She didn't dub Judy Garland's singing voice. She dubbed
Oh,
speaking
okay.
voice. Yeah, no. She did record a record in Spanish, but she wasn't really a singer per se. So it
Uh-huh.
was dubbing of the dialogue.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
That's
like
great.
I have two daughters that are now grown, and I did the same thing with them. I sat them down to watch To Kill a Mockingbird. I took them to all kinds of foreign films, and sort
Yeah.
of dissected and analyzed films with them and stuff. So maybe they'll pass. This will just keep going down the
Yeah.
lineage.
M My parents were and are not much, of we're not big movie fans.
Really? So how did you
Yes,
get to be
but
a
one
movie
thing
fan then?
I know, it's so funny because all of us, kids are kinda movie buffs and I don't know, it's an interesting thing. My mom's more of a reader.
Mhm, mhm.
My mom loves to read, but the one thing that they did do that I think was very helpful is that they always encouraged conversation about whether we're reading something, whether we're watching something,
Great.
to not just sort of mindlessly consume content,
Right.
to think about it. What is it you like about it? And we would have these long conversations, usually in the kitchen.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that I think they were excellent in it, and I didn't really realize that that was unusual or special until I went to college, and I would try to have some of these same kind of conversations that I would always have with my mom, and my dad on occasion when he wasn't working 70, 80 hours a week. Um, but I would have these conversations with my friends, and they would be very annoyed. They're like, "We just want to watch the movie. We don't want."
Yeah, no, it's funny how when you grow up like that and you're kind of analyzing, dissecting, and just sort of thinking about it, and
Yeah,
and the rest of the world kind of goes, "Yeah, I liked it," or "It's boring," or "Yeah, it was,"
you re- and I mean, to me, that was part of the fun of it,
Yeah, totally.
like talking about
Yeah,
it
absolutely. I think
and
that's a
having that.
really I did that a lot with my parents too, and they were also big readers. And I think it's all kind of connected. It's just kind of
Hmm.
having conversations about storytelling, about content, as you say, and not mindlessly just absorbing it and moving on.
Hmm. So I think growing up, it actually helped in kind of inspire the inner critic
Hmm.
in me because
Hmm.
that's how I was
Yeah,
raised.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
very
So,
cool.
how did you end up going into like you got your degree in journalism, correct?
In communications, actually. I went
Oh,
to
communications.
UCLA, and
Okay.
they didn't have a journalism major when I was there, so it was mass communications, which was kind of was an interdisciplinary major. So you took communications classes, and I actually
Hmm.
they had a graduate degree or a little bit of a leftover degree in journalism. So I would take some journalism classes, like a magazine writing class, but um, basically this was kind of you took some social sciences and some anthropology and some English, and then I went to graduate school and studied communications at USC Annenberg School. So it was I kind of fell into journalism later. I began kind of as an English major. I studied
Mm.
literature at Cambridge and also in Mexico, and I loved anthropology. So I was not necessarily thinking about being a critic, although I did work on the Daily Bruin. Um,
Oh, really?
yeah, doing like copy editing and stuff. So I'd always loved to write. Since I was a little girl, I was always writing little stories and stuff, and my mother would
Hmm.
save them all. So yeah, it really wasn't until I was, kind of out of graduate school and deeper into like my late 20s that I heard about this program at the LA Times called METPRO, Minority Educational Training Program, and it was up at like the UCLA job board. I called them up and talked to this nice person who was in charge of it, and they said, "Oh, well, you need to get some more experience because the people who are applying are like journalism majors or they've worked on their papers and they have all this stuff to submit." So I went to work for like a little tiny, like twice weekly paper up in Glendale, and did that for a year, and then applied and got into that program, which was like
Mm.
a little J school kind of condensed because you had like 3 months of like a classroom session, and then they put you in uh, like when the Times had bureaus like the West Side or Orange County or the Valley, and you would do cops and then you do courts. So you really did get this great training in basic journalism on the job.
Hmm. So then you went from that to working in like local news and entertainment reporting. Is that right?
Yeah, so I worked probably, let's say I started in 86, and then in 89 I went over to the calendar section and started writing about, first I wrote about radio. I read about Howard Stern and Rush Limbaugh. It was kind of the rise of that era. And then, but film was really what I wanted to get into. And so, yeah, I kind of worked my way into the film end of things and wrote stories about the film industry,
Mm.
interviewing directors and producers and some actors and doing profiles. And then it wasn't until I went over to USA Today that I started to actually do reviews. And when they hired me to write about the industry. And I always said, writing about the industry is sort of like if you're in Detroit writing about, the auto industry, because it's like it's
Hmm.
Hollywood. It's, based in LA. But anyway, I remember asking them, can I review some movies? Because I consciously thought, like, what can you age into that will, because you can't go chasing like, you know, stories, I thought, when you're old. And so you need to have something that like, you can kind of be an older person, and your opinion is valued. And so I asked if I could review, and I was told, probably not. And then I said, well, look, I'm the only one that has kids. Can I do like family movies? And so they threw me a bone and gave me Dog of Flanders. So there was a bone involved. And that was the first
Mm.
movie I reviewed. And then from there, I kind of worked my way into like being the second string person, and then eventually became the lead critic, and then the lone
Hmm.
critic.
Did you have to work kind of a lot with editors at first, and then, or did you immediately kind of have your style and your
I think I had this wonderful editor, the guy who had hired me, Dennis Moore, and he said, I think she can do this. And I'm going to personally be her editor, even though he was kind of like higher up and he was doing other stuff. He like became my, he was like kind of looking over my stuff and making sure that uh, that whatever that I had, what it took. And I really feel grateful to him because he kind of took me, it took the time to edit my stuff. And I studied a lot of, I would sleep with volumes of Pauline Kael by my bed and like read them at night and try
Hmm.
to absorb and read the critics that I really admired and just try to get a sense of it and watch a lot of things and kind of, teach myself. But I will say that editor
Yeah.
really did spend some time. And I'd had some great editors at the Times. There was a person named Steve Clow there who you would sit next to him and like he just somehow made your copy sing. I've had some really good editors over the years, so I think I feel really grateful about that.
That's so good. I'm experiencing that a little bit now with I've started doing more theater reviews recently. There's this group, the Utah Theater Bloggers Association, and that has been really amazing for
Oh,
me.
that's great.
And I've learned so much in just the last month when working with the editor that they have there, and just it's interesting the differences between writing for film and writing for
Oh,
theater.
yeah. So what are you finding some of the differences
They want you to be a lot more detailed in it. Like
about
when I'm writing
performance
for
and things
film,
like
people are so nervous about spoilers. They don't want to know what's happening in this scene, or for me to
that?
say
Right.
like this was a really powerful moving scene.
Right.
That's considered a spoiler. So I can't really say that. I can just be like he was overall
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
or whatever. Whereas they want that. They want to be like so and so did bring him home great. And the choreography in you know,
Yeah.
Master of the House was amazing, or whatever, and then go into that a little bit more. Choreography by so and so, and so that's been a big difference to me
That
is
is
like
a
kind
big
of the
difference. I wonder if
amount of detail.
does that have something to do with the fact that so many plays are, you know, um, like reviews, or they're things that we've seen before, so it's not
Yeah,
spoiling something. They're not necessarily
that's probably part of it. Yeah, I mean, it might be different if you're talking, writing for Broadway or some of the
right.
new shows and
Right.
things like that.
Yeah.
And if there's something that's like an obvious spoiler, they would still want you to keep that.
Sure.
Like what happens at the beginning of Phantom or something. You don't want to spoil
Right.
that for people who haven't seen it.
For the three
um,
people who haven't seen Phantom.
right. But it's been an interesting experience working with him. And like, for instance, he caught the fact that I always say, so and so did a great job. And he's like, don't say that all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time.
It's really
Something
that's one of those
different.
things you do in speaking. Like when you do a podcast, or when I do the NPR show, I'll say, "Oh, so and so did a great job," or "They were terrific." But you can be more colloquial and more conversational,
Yeah.
whereas writing is a little more formal. And I remember I kept using the word "wan," WAN, like this performance was wan, and this editor of mine said, "No, I'm banning you from using the word wan." Say
Yeah.
dull, or say, I don't know, pale or
Yeah.
pallid or something, but don't say one.
There is something really satisfying though about finishing a review and being like, I nailed it. I said exactly what I
Exactly.
was trying to say.
Yes.
And you're just like, yes.
You spend the time doing that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true. And there are certain, you have certain working relationships with editors. I had another really wonderful editor named Patty Rule, and it was just, she was full of enthusiasm, and, you just kind of like your minds melded together. Like you'd be, I'd have something and she'd go, well, do you want to maybe change this? And together we came up with the perfect word or something that maybe
Mm-hmm.
individually we might not have been able to. So it's, even though writing is not necessarily a collaborative thing, when you have one good editor like that, it can make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what would you say are some of your more memorable reviews for USA Today? Do you remember like some unpopular opinions that
Oh
you
yeah.
had?
It's funny. This was before when I was there. I left in 2015. So they had initially they would have like comments and anybody could comment, and then the comments got so across the board and the paper got so nasty that they started to like, I forget how they changed it so that you had to like, maybe you couldn't be anonymous in your comments or something like that. So
Mm,
once people had to put their names on it, then their comments were a little bit less vitriolic.
yeah. I turned off comments for particularly any superhero
I was going to say,
movie.
so all the superhero movies, the fanboys would come in, and it's weird because I actually liked a lot of superhero movies. I wasn't like
Yeah.
anti, but yes, I definitely heard from a lot of angry fanboys. But the one thing I found was when I would write a review and somebody would have a very strong opinion, sometimes they would actually email you, and I would always take the time to respond. If like they took the time to email me, then I'm going to respond. And they'd be so
Hmm.
surprised. They'd go, oh, I never expect to hear back from you. And sometimes it would be pretty mean. It'd be like, you must be an idiot, blah, blah, blah. And then I would be like, well, I can, kind of see your point, but this is why I said this. And then we'd end up having a very reasonable, rational back and forth in emails. And they would end up going like, thank you
Hmm.
for responding. And so, and I learned some things too. Like I was thinking, there was a movie by M. Night Shyamalan that I did not like called The Happening. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
Nobody liked that movie. And it sort of stole from a children's book. And
Yeah. It wasn't
no.
great.
And I wrote my
No.
bad review, as did so many other people. And then somebody wrote, and they had a whole different take on it, and they explained what their take was. It didn't make me like the movie any better, but it made me think and go, oh, okay, well, the way this
Yeah.
person approached it, that's so I feel like a lot of times those comments would sort of open my mind to something, and
Hmm.
that was useful. But I remember I
Yeah.
hated.
That's the dream. Unfortunately, you have these provocateurs
Mhm.
that that they really rile up those kinds of people and sort of fan the divisiveness,
Exactly, and it's
with
gotten so
their
much worse now. I mean,
and
in
so
the
it's
7 years since
tough.
I left, it is tough. And sometimes you just like, okay, whatever, say what you want to say.
Mhm.
But I remember in conversation where like people would ask me, I didn't like Moulin Rouge. I'm not a huge Baz Luhrmann fan. I did like Romeo and Juliet. It's just not
Mhm.
my necessarily my cup of tea. It
Yeah.
was definitely my era of music, but it didn't work. It was too frenetic for me. And I'm very curious about Elvis, which I haven't seen yet, but
Yeah.
because of that. But so I'm not necessarily, I always hate to say there's like people will say, well, what's your favorite genre of movie? And I do feel like there's a good movie in every genre. There's bad movies in every genre too. But
Yeah.
I can't really. I used to think, oh, I like psychological thrillers, or oh, I like a drama, but and I don't like rom coms, or whatever. And now I can't say that because I have seen good movies in every conceivable kind of
Yeah.
genre, and I've seen good movies by directors that maybe I didn't think I liked, and I've seen bad movies by directors
Mhm.
that I worshipped. So it's
Yeah, I always try to have an open mind.
yes,
Just actually yesterday, I'm not a big horror person. I can be kind of a wimp when it comes to that. But again, I try to have an open mind, and I went and saw Black Phone, and I really
I
enjoyed
haven't
it.
seen that
I
yet.
thought it was
Yeah,
a lot
good.
of fun. It had good tension. I thought the kids were great actors. So you never
I'm
know.
the
You
same
always
way. I
want to,
thought I didn't like horror movies a long time ago, and then I realized, no, I do. If they're well
yeah.
made, and sometimes they're of their time. Like I remember watching Blair Witch at Sundance at like the midnight showing, and I thought it
Mm,
was terrifying. And then I saw it again, like maybe 6 months later, and it wasn't terrifying. And it didn't necessarily like the whole milieu of the midnight show at Sundance
yeah.
worked better. But yeah, I think it's so
Well,
important to keep an open mind.
as somebody who lives in Utah, I know that and I've covered Sundance many, many times.
Right.
It definitely works its magic at
It
times.
does. Yeah. Yeah. They call it, what is it, like a festival fever?
Yeah, the high
Yeah,
altitude.
that and Telluride.
Park City.
Exactly. And it certainly
Excuse me.
affected, people who would spend like what millions of dollars on care for the Spitfire grill or Happy Texas or like these movies that are like turn out to not be good, but there was like a
Mhm.
war over them.
Yeah. Yeah, or it seems like I always have an unpopular opinion every Sundance. Like, I didn't like Brittany Runs a Marathon, and that was sort of
I
the
didn't like
festival
it that much
darling.
either. Yeah, I didn't see
I
it
was
at the
just too
festival.
negative. I just couldn't root for her. She was too much of a jerk.
Yeah, yeah.
And I felt like the excuse was, well, she's plus size, so therefore she can be a jerk. I'm like, why
No. Yeah.
does she get to be a jerk?
Those two ideas do not track.
No. And this year, I didn't love Cha Cha Real
You know what?
Smooth,
That's so funny.
which
I haven't seen it. I was
didn't hate it,
but
but
you're not alone. Amy Nicholson and I were on Film Week last week, and she felt the same way. And I have a feeling that I might, just from her description, I'll have to sit down and watch it now. I
yeah.
really, really loved um, Good Luck to You, Leo Grant.
Yeah, that was good.
Loved it. And I didn't see it at Sundance. The last time I went to Sundance in 2020 in January, and I didn't do these last two Sundances that were virtual. So I did catch up with some of the movies, but um,
Well, if you come back, you'll have to let me know
yeah,
because
definitely.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
Are you a fan of Rachel's Reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies.
Why do you think diversity and inclusion in criticism matters so much?
It matters because you need just a spectrum of opinions and ways of looking at things. You need people with a wide range of experiences, of traditions, of lifestyles, of thoughts. It's interesting. The idea of diversity should be also diverse, not just people of a different ethnicities, but also diverse ways of looking at things and diverse thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and approaches that might be out of the mainstream. I just think
Yeah.
you don't want to get into like a group think sort of thing, and I do think that can happen when you have all white cis male critics, and that's kind of what it's been for it was for so long. And
Yeah.
and people would get a job when they're in their 20s or 30s or whatever, and then hold on to it until they're in their 80s. And and they were always white males, and there just wouldn't be room for other people. And I just feel like we need to make room. We need to have a really just a world that's filled with different ways of approaching things and looking at things. And I think the more
Yeah.
that we can have that, the more people will really get value from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really interesting to hear different perspectives. And also, I think just for the one reason that like Hollywood is supposedly trying to make content for all of these different groups, right? And so if you don't have people that are saying this one wasn't good, this do more like this other one, then you're just going to get junk.
Yeah,
People are just going to be trying to
yeah,
guess what women want or what
yeah.
a minority or LGBTQ or whatever it might be. I mean,
And they
you need to
don't
have that
necessarily.
group saying this is what we as a collective audience want, and we're
Exactly.
going to try to guide you.
I mean, also Hollywood should be diversifying its ranks. Obviously, we need more people of
Yeah.
color and all kinds of different people who can greenlight things,
Hmm.
and so that needs to be happening concurrently. But we
Right.
need to have this. Yeah, I always there's like little examples that I run into all the time. I remember I was reviewing a documentary that Ron Howard did last year about. I think it was called Rebuilding Paradise.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the town with fire, and it was really interesting because I live in California. This was way way up in the northern part of California. I don't know the town very well, and so everybody he was talking to kind of looked very similar. They were all white people. They were usually middle aged. When he did talk to like a young person, it was like a young white guy, and I just thought, oh, it's one of those towns that's just filled with white people. And then there was a scene in which they read a list of the people who had been affected by the fire, and it was all these Latino names. And I'm like, It's not a
That's
all white
interesting.
people. And he didn't bother to talk to anybody that wasn't,
Yeah.
and
Because I think he had
he
family
did. Yeah, his
in
wife,
Paradise, so that's
mother,
probably why he talked to the people that his family knew,
probably,
and
and they were probably all white people,
yeah,
yeah. But, you have to think outside of that, and you have to
yeah,
make an effort, and I'm sure as a white male, he didn't necessarily notice it, and that's the thing
right,
where I think with critics, it's the same thing. If you happen to be a white male and you're watching a movie that has, like, I remember about Ford versus Ferrari, there was, like, the one female role in it, played by Katrina Balfe,
Catriona, yeah,
and she's a good actress, but it was a very sort of stereotypical role, like, oh, the good wife, who stands behind her man, and then, oh, she maybe races around in her station wagon a little bit, but for the most part, it's all men.
yeah,
And all these, I saw it at Telluride, and all these men loved it, and I'm like, what stood out to me was that I never, it was just this one woman, but a guy doesn't notice
yeah,
that oftentimes. So,
yeah,
you just need so many more kinds of eyes and ears on the content.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Yeah, I mean, because I cover Hallmark movies for my other podcast, and some people look at them as, oh, well, they're all the same. Well, they're not all the same,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah,
good ones and there's bad
right.
ones, and I think it's worthwhile to have somebody out there saying that's not motivated by like box office or views in the case of television, that's keeping tabs on kind of things before it becomes this like monster that is
Yeah,
out of control.
exactly, exactly. And just
Yeah.
because, we have certain genres, I guess you'd call Hallmark movies a genre in a way.
Yeah.
And you can call sci-fi movies, like all those things.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they can't be, look at something like Bridgerton, that's so
Right.
beautifully diverse, and that falls into a genre. It's like you can do anything,
Hmm.
and you can
Yeah.
represent all kinds, and it doesn't necessarily, I don't know. I just feel like people have to think outside the box as creators, and then the critic has to think outside the box in terms of watching it and assessing it.
Well, and especially with Bridgerton, when it came out, I was kind of joking on Twitter. I was like, I think it's sort of ridiculous that any man is reviewing this show because it was so obviously made to please women.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it, especially the first
The
season, the
Duke.
way it was
Yeah.
shot, that female
Yeah.
gaze, the way it was specifically made to be, for lack of a better word, kind of lustful for
Right.
women and enjoyable on that level. And so I was not interested in hearing what any man had to say about it. I was really not. I mean, it wasn't made for them.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
not that they can't review it. Of course they can.
Right.
But I was not personally
Yeah.
interested
Yeah. And
in
that's the
their
thing.
takes.
So if there weren't other women critics, you'd be
Yeah.
stuck with just their view.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So with criticism becoming so accessible, do you feel like critics and criticism still matter as far as
I think in
professional
some
critics?
ways more than ever, because of
Hmm.
the plethora of content.
Yeah,
Like, how do you make
that's true.
it through so much stuff? It's like you need somebody, and I do this with streaming. I mean, or I'll go to the New York Times, or I'll go somewhere to find, like, what should I be watching? I hear from friends, and so I value that, and but I think you need people with informed viewpoints that can guide you more than ever, because you have, it's such a golden age for TV, for streaming, and the content is so murky, like, something that is in theaters is also on Hulu or on HBO or on Apple or Netflix or something. So do you want to spend that money? I mean, I do think that it's still important. And do you want to risk potentially, the pandemic, whatever it is you're going out to do, to
Yeah,
theaters. And if you're not going to theaters and you're just watching it at home, you want to spend those 2 hours, or binging 8 hours, whatever. You want to spend it wisely. So I think
yeah.
more than ever, you need informed voices.
Yeah, and I get that having a screening link is a total privilege, but can also be a major pain. Contacting all the different reps and trying. Sometimes it takes 4 or 5 contact. I mean, probably not for someone like you, but for someone small like me, it does. And it can be a real hassle
Oh,
to
it
get
can definitely be, and especially
a
now that you have, what was that? It's something I was watching the other day. It's like, well, Hulu's owned by Disney. So do you go to someone at Hulu? Do you go to someone at Disney? Do you, and like Warner's or HBO and all that stuff. And then the proprietariness of the links, and you have to
Yeah.
get the access code and all that stuff. I used to like I loved going to screenings. You just walk in, and if your name's on the
Yeah.
list, you get to go in. It's
I know, I'm so grateful they're basically back, thank goodness,
yes,
for most of them,
yes,
because it was, and at least in my area, like, the people that did the screenings were completely unhelpful during the pandemic. I mean, they were very short-staffed, so I understand, but anything that I reviewed during that time period was from my own hustle.
wow, yeah. No, it's very
Um,
true. It's very
it
true.
was hard.
And there's something about the camaraderie too of like seeing your colleagues at the
Yeah, yeah,
screening.
yeah.
Yeah, I really
It's
missed that for
true.
those couple of years. Yeah.
It's true. When I was not a big fan of, Alex Garland's Men. I
Mm,
did not like that
yeah,
movie at
I
all,
didn't see it.
and,
But I loved
I
like Ex Machina and some of his other
yeah,
movies.
Ex Machina was
Yeah.
good, but I was sitting there, my friend Rich was just looking at me like, "Oh, no, Rachel's hating this movie." I'm like, "You were right."
Yeah.
Especially that ending. Oh,
I didn't see it. But
oh,
that's the other thing I feel like
I hated it. I thought it was
I
terrible,
used to
but
see everything when I was working at USA Today because I was the lone critic. So, like, I always
mhm.
say I see them so you don't have to. Um,
Yeah.
but now that I do the radio show and I do it a couple times a month, so I'll just see what's out that week. And even then, like, I didn't see Cha Cha Real Smooth because my colleague did, and I watched something else.
Mhm.
I watched Wellwood or something. So it's not quite as people will say, "Well, what did you think of blah blah blah?" And I'll be like, "I didn't see it." So
Yeah.
the beauty of that is I don't have to see everything. If it's not on the week that I'm reviewing. But then on the other hand, I sort of feel like, oh, there's some things you just need to see because you need to see.
Yeah. Well, and I think you gotta find sort of your niche a little bit. Like, it's good to get out of your comfort zone too,
Yes, it is.
but definitely during the holidays, things are very tight for me.
Oh yeah.
I have to see so many Christmas
Same. Oh
movies.
yeah. I can imagine for Hallmark. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's a crazy time for everybody because we're watching all the awards contenders,
Yeah.
and then I do a lot of moderating for panels. So if I have to I'm gonna have to watch it
Oh,
again
that'd be
because I'm going to
fun.
be talking to the filmmaker, and then I'm also curating a film festival. So I'm like last year we had we had 5,000 submissions, and we had to choose 200 films out of that. So I
Yeah,
like
I was gonna ask,
it's
how do you feel? Do you feel like festivals are gonna be able to rebound,
Yeah, I actually
from this
do. I think
pandemic?
they
Yeah.
are rebounding already.
Mhm.
We had Cannes this year, and we're going to have Telluride. I've already I'm planning on Toronto, and our festival, Santa Barbara International Film Festival, was in March, and it was kind of this just sheer luck, kind of this little golden period. It was like after the big January, February Omicron craziness,
Mhm.
and just before whatever these next ones have been called 1 and 2 or whatever. So it was like this little oasis of like
Window.
decent health. And we ended up having people from all over the world. We had probably 20 countries represented, people from South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, subcontinent, India. I mean, people were so hungry to come together and enjoy
Yeah.
films. And yeah, I think that model is there, and people want to, you know, see it thrive. So I do think they will come back. And yeah, it was really hard to do things that were virtual. I mean, it was some advantages because you could, I worked on AF5, I was their senior programmer, and we had 100% involvement from all the filmmakers because they could beam in from Nigeria or Argentina or
Yeah.
wherever. So that was great on Zoom. But did people watch, those? There's something about having the filmmaker in the room there with you that you can ask a question of and all that.
Yeah.
And so I'm not worried about film festivals going away. I think they're already rebounding.
Yeah, I went just for one day to New York Film Festival last year, and then I went to, Animationist Film
Oh, cool.
in, LA. That was a great film
Oh,
festival.
wow.
Since you're out that way, if you ever get a chance, it was
Yeah.
so well done.
More people would go to it. Yeah.
Yeah, the panels were great. It was really fun to get to see movies that just went straight to streaming. Like, they had Luca
Oh,
on the
right.
big screen, they had Mitchell's vs. the Machines, um
And those should be seen on big screens, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
Vivo, that was on there. So that was really, really, really cool, and then to get to hear from the filmmakers, and we got to see Belle, which was one of my favorite movies last
Oh,
year.
wow.
by
yeah.
Hosada, and he was there and introduced the
Oh,
movie,
that's
and
so
so
cool. Yeah.
that was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That
fantastic.
was so good. So I'm hoping to get to go to that again this year because it was such a great experience.
And
Uh,
I am just such a fan of film festivals. And one of the great perks that has come about when I was at USA was I'd be asked to be on juries at film festivals. So I did
oh,
one in
interesting.
Zurich, one in Chile. I mean, I've kind of been all over the world, either attending
Hmm.
them or, on juries. And it's been it's like one of the best experiences of my life. And I feel like it's like,
Yeah.
people, doctors have like continuing medical education, or lawyers have continuing legal stuff. It's like continuing education in the world of film criticism, because you're sitting with either other film critics or other filmmakers, and you're talking about films, and you're
Hmm.
seeing things, in a different way, perhaps just having that conversation that we were talking about at the beginning of the show here, like really analyzing things. Oh, I was on the jury in Edinburgh, and Frank Langella was on the jury with me, and Joe Wright. It's like, when would you
Ooh.
have access to spend 5 days with these people and talking about ideas over drinks? And it's pretty great.
Have you ever had to lead a panel or do an interview with somebody that a movie that you didn't care for?
Well, yeah, all the time. I don't know that I have necessarily given a bad review to something and then had to do a panel, but no, that's not true. I have done that on the radio where I've talked about it, and either they haven't
Mm.
heard, or they don't pay attention, or they're big enough to look beyond it. But
Because usually for Hallmark, usually I haven't seen the movie, which is to the benefit when I interview the stars and be
right.
like, if I have, sometimes you'll hear me ask a question like, how was it working on that project? Something like that. Was
Yeah,
that fun?
yeah. I mean, I don't think that they're
Because,
paying necessarily that close of attention. Sometimes your review, or like in the case of moderating, I do a lot of them during award season. So, like, something can come out in October or September, and then I'll moderate the panel in
hmm,
December. So, unless they're holding a grudge for months on it, they're not going to pay attention. Um,
yeah,
so it's usually okay. But and of course, you don't in any way show that you didn't like the movie, because your job is simply to draw out the filmmaker or
right.
the actors and have them talk about the experience and have the audience. I always think of myself as an audience surrogate. It's like you ask the questions that the audience would want to really know the answers to.
Yeah. Yeah, I've only ever really had, and this was just online, this wasn't in an interview, but one of the writers for one of the Hallmark movies that I'd been pretty tough on, I didn't enjoy a particular one, and she was like, that was one of my favorites, and but I was like, I'm sorry, I still love you, you're great, but
I've, I've
just didn't work
I've
for
gone
me.
to like events. I remember one time being at some kind of like a party after a screening, and I was talking to John Cusack, and he goes, "Oh, once he saw my name, he's like, yeah, you've liked some of my
Yeah,
movies," and
yeah.
so like
Um,
I'll focus on the one that I
it,
did like, or 10.
it was it was funny at the Hollywood Critics Association awards in February. They had Jamie Dornan was there for Belfast, and he got up and he was like, "The people in this room have said some of the meanest things about
Yeah,
me."
yeah.
I was like, "That's
Maybe
true."
celebrating you now. Yeah. 50 Shades.
Yeah. What do you think is the key to a movie that stands out for you when you are programming the festival? Something that you're looking
Um,
for.
it depends too. I've programmed a few festivals. I've been program director for Napa Valley, Mendocino, a film festival in Chapel Hill, AFI, and now Santa Barbara. So you also have to take into, obviously, into mind, who the audience is. I mean, I'm never gonna show a movie that I personally think is bad, but I have shown some movies that I have not been a huge fan of, but I think the audience might like better. What I'm looking for is, something. I also like to challenge people. So every once in a while, I'll show a movie. You obviously don't want to program 200 movies that are challenging and off-putting, but you can, out of 200, you could do a few of those, right? And you can, so ones that people will come up to me afterwards and go, I didn't really like that, or I didn't really get that, or it was disturbing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's good
Right.
to push yourself out of that comfort zone, but you don't want to do all the movies like that. So I look at so many different factors. I mean, I know film festivals are, people love documentaries. People when I do Santa Barbara, it's on the ocean, so people love movies about the ocean, whether it's ocean, like
Mm-hmm.
marine life or surfing or something else. So I'll take that into account. Sometimes it's just I love a movie so much that it's like I really want to share that love with other people, and I think they will too. I want to have a lot of countries represented. I want to have a lot of filmmakers represented. Again, have enough people who are BIPOC, represent telling LGBTQ stories, just making sure that you
Mm-hmm.
cover as wide a spectrum as possible.
Yeah.
And you're in a way, I think it's important to enlighten people and have them watch things that they can learn from, or that I was thinking of something like Lunana, a yak in the classroom. When have we ever seen a movie out of Bhutan? Um,
Mm-hmm.
with a yak, with or without a
Yeah.
yak, so those kinds of things.
Well, I always feel like there's a couple movies every year that I kind of become my baby, and then I'm like champion that
Yes.
I try to get. Memorably, I loved the film Your Name,
Oh
2016.
yeah, we actually the LA Film
That's
Critics,
one
the
of my.
president of the LA Film Critics, and we gave that our animation award. Uh,
It was
yeah,
so
it's a
good.
great,
I loved that.
and that's what we can
This
do
year,
as critics if you're in a group. I think I really feel
hmm
like the power of the aggregate. Like you're able to champion something. But anyway, I'm sorry I cut you off.
yeah, no, I agree. Like this year for me, my baby is Hit the Road.
I love Hit the
I don't know if
Road.
you've.
It's so funny
I
because I was
loved
thinking
it.
about if you're going to ask me what my favorite movies are so far, and I was going to say Good Luck to You, Leo Grande and Hit the Road. Love that
Oh
movie. And
yes,
I just, Jafar Panahi, it's like his son is brilliant too. It's so cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what a strong first
Oh my
effort, and
God. Love it.
I mean, you're talking about a place that you that I'm not familiar
No.
with being
Yeah.
introduced to, and yeah, I've seen movies set in Iran, but they've always been in the city,
Yes. Right.
and so I've never seen one that showed just these vistas
I
that were
know.
so
The
beautiful, and
countryside of Iran, I never thought about that because I always think about Tehran or whatever,
yeah,
or we've seen amazing movies by Asghar Farhadi. So, and those tend to be sort of more
yeah,
urban movies telling a complicated ethical urban quandary. And then here's this movie where they're on a road trip through the
mm,
countryside. I felt like to me, it's like traveling. The next best thing to actually going somewhere is either to watch a movie, and then the next step would be like to read about it. But all those
yeah,
things expose you to the world, and you're just, you learn so much from it, and
yeah.
you're just broadened by the
And
experience.
I don't know anybody that couldn't relate to Hit the Road. I mean, it's just if you've been on a road
Yeah,
trip,
with
like
a
who hasn't been
family
on a
and
road
everybody
trip?
kind of
I mean,
bickering, and yeah, and the
yeah,
dog, and totally relatable. And if you tell people like, oh, they're in the countryside of Iran, you'd think, what would I have in common with that? I don't know about the countryside of Iran,
yeah,
but no, it's so. That's to me one of the best things is films that are very, very specific, either in their location or the story that they're telling, but are also really universal. I mean, I use
yeah,
Moonlight as an example. I don't know what it's like to
yes,
be an African American boy who is gay in Florida, and yet I completely related to him and
yeah,
feelings. And I think when you get really specific and you do it well and you do it authentically with honesty, and it's gonna, we're all gonna relate.
yeah. And it's been fun also to see everyone get excited about RRR this year, I think. Have you had a chance to see that yet?
No, I haven't.
It's so good.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen. Oh my God, there's like stuff that I really need to catch up to. I just, and that is
hmm
while I was
Have you ever seen a Rajamouli film
no,
with like Bo Bali or
no.
well, they're all on Netflix, and it's just like an experience. It's so exciting to just dive into a different culture
Yes, so
and
exciting to do that. I
yeah,
know.
it's
No,
so
I feel
fun.
like it's while I was for the 6 months that I was working on the film festival, I could only watch the films that were submitted to us.
Oh right.
So I missed so much. I missed that last season of Succession that I really wanted to see. Like I'm going to catch up to those things eventually, but then there's going to be new things that come up, and
I know.
I would actually feel sort of resentful because it's like I'm enjoying the movies that I'm having to watch, but at the same time I'm missing this. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
so now that I have like a little bit of downtime, I'm trying to catch up to as much as I can. So
Yeah. Well, I can feel that way sometimes, especially at Christmas, like I said.
yes,
During the holiday
right,
season,
right.
it's
You know that
intense for
feeling,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Different times.
Oh, that kind of leads into my my next question is, do you feel optimistic or pessimistic about the state of film?
You
We
know,
have so much content and so many voices are able to share their content
yeah,
these days.
that's reason
And
for
but then, what's happening with,
yes,
theaters and them being closed for so long.
yes.
There's reasons, I think, for
There's
both.
definitely reasons for both. I think I'm maybe because by nature I'm more of an optimist than a pessimist. So I'm more optimistic than pessimistic, but I certainly am concerned, particularly for independent films and what's going to happen in terms of theatrical distribution. Here in
Hmm.
LA, we have the Lemley theaters are kind of it for a lot of independent films. I'm actually on the board of a new up and coming um, film location on the east side of LA, which doesn't have a whole lot. It's called Vidiots, and we're going to be opening up this new theater space.
Oh,
So
yeah. Didn't the Landmark, wasn't that one that just
the Landmark
closed?
just closed,
Yeah,
and
we're hearing about that.
yeah, and a couple of the Lemleys have closed. So it's been a really tough time for theatrical distribution, no question. And if you're not a Marvel movie, all of that.
Yeah.
But I do feel optimistic about storytelling. I
Mm.
think it's morphing in terms of where we get it, where we see it, whether you see it on your phone, see it on a big screen. I still think that the best way to see things is in a theater. Your concentration, your focus is going to be much better than, we all are guilty of. We watch things at home, of pausing, checking our phones, or getting up to get something to drink or whatever. So all of that is,
Yeah.
of course, a negative, but also there's just such good storytelling going on, and so it's hard to be completely negative. I don't necessarily see the experience of movie going just like disappearing. I think it's just changing, and I think
Yeah.
it's also too hard to sort of judge it during while we're still kind of in the pandemic. I mean, we sort of feel like we're not, but we are still, and so there's yeah, I guess I just feel more optimistic than negative, but I am concerned about the state of theatrical distribution. How could you not be?
Yeah. I think that's fair.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
When I just do one-on-one interviews, I like to end with some fun, silly
Okay.
questions. So I'm going to give you the fun, silly questions. So first question is, what is the best ice cream flavor?
Ooh, like a gelato, and I am a big chocolate hazelnut person, dark
Oh,
chocolate,
okay.
but I am also lactose intolerant. So, no, my absolute favorite, passion fruit sorbet. Yes,
That sounds good. That sounds good. All right. What's your favorite color?
green.
Oh, very good. What music are you into?
Ooh, I'm into all kinds of music. Not all. I'm not a country person. I'll just put that out there right
Mm-hmm.
away. Like, I'm interested in R&B and rock. I grew up obviously 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but I'm trying to also stay as much as I to also be exposed to um, what's going on right now. I'll tell you my absolute favorite movie soundtrack is Amelie by Tierson.
Oh,
Love
that's
it.
a fun one.
I actually have one of the songs as my ringtone. But yeah, and I like classical music too. I kind of do have a pretty eclectic taste in music.
They did a Broadway musical of Amelie.
They did? How did I miss
Yeah,
that?
they did.
What was that?
I think it was, I want to say right before the pandemic, or
Wow.
it's not that old. It's not that. I'm not positive, but you should look it
Oh,
up.
I
Yeah.
should. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your go-to date night food?
Ooh.
Or lately we've been saying, what's your DoorDash order?
Yeah, probably sushi. Although DoorDash not so good for sushi.
Yeah.
I always love Italian food. I always love Japanese food. Yeah,
That's some good
guess
one.
those are
All right. What's your go-to date night activity to go out and do something?
not going to the movies. Although I spent my life doing that. It's so weird to like have as your job what people do
Yeah.
fun, which is fun. So what is my date? I've been married for too long. I'm old. Um, going out to dinner. Yeah. And
Yeah.
just, like taking a long walk after that and just kind of chilling.
Yeah, we always said if you are going to do the dinner and a movie date, it's best to flip it and do the movie and then dinner.
Yes.
Then you can talk about the movie.
Yes. Or you can go
when you're at
see
dinner.
like something like Big Night and go, or, where it's like a certain kind of food is featured and then you go.
Yeah, or like chef.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
that would be fun. All right. What do you prefer, dogs or cats?
Dogs. Well, I have both. I have 2 dogs and a cat, but I love them both. But I'm slightly more into dogs.
Beaches or mountains?
Beaches.
I love the beach.
Okay.
What is your favorite holiday to celebrate?
Thanksgiving, because it's food.
Oh, nice.
Any holiday set around food, I'm all about it.
Yeah. What is your favorite? Well, I say Hallmark, but you don't have to. What is your favorite romantic movie?
Ooh. I really actually going back to Leo Grand, although it's not really romantic, but I really liked 500 Days of Summer.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I did like La La Land, although I see all the reasons that people didn't like it. What else?
I liked it. I just didn't think it was like the savior of
No,
musicals.
not at all. And it was the same year as Moonlight, and Moonlight was like the savior to me. So yeah, I was on Team Moonlight. It's funny. I always think I'm not a rom-com person. My daughter, who's 28, loves rom-coms. And so I've seen some with her explaining why, because I brought her up to explain these things. We had those conversations. So now I'm starting to have a greater appreciation for rom. What I liked? I don't know if this is romantic, but it was out, I think this year or the year, or maybe last year, with Issa Rae and
Birds. It's Birds something with
Lovebirds or something. Was that
Lovebirds? Yeah.
I love
say Thornbirds. I'm like, no, that's not right.
I like the concept of like everything that can go wrong does on like this romantic night, like date night. I know a lot of people didn't like that movie with Tina Fey and Steve Carell. I liked it. I like those are kind of like my like they're funny and weird and
Cool. Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming and doing this. I
It's
really
really
appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
It's been so wonderful to get to know you, and I really admire you and in your career. So thank you so much for taking the time.
It's been wonderful to get to know you, and this has been a great conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Do you have any social media or anything like that you want to share?
Yeah. So I am Instagram, I think is, what is it? Claudia _Puig _. Twitter is at Claudia Puig. Yeah, that's it, I guess.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll put all that in the description. Definitely check it out. And if you're listening, check out our playlist of all of the entries of the Female Film Critics panel that we've done over 2 years of amazing episodes. So please take a look at that. And you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That helps us so much. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that so much. And we also have the Patreon group and merch store where you can get Female Film Critics panels designed items and shirts. And so check that out. And thanks so much, Claudia. I really appreciate it.
And
we'll talk to y'all.
I just think it's such a great idea. I'm so glad you do this. So
yes, it's so much fun. It's an honor, and I really, really love it. So thanks so much. And we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.